would yield to the gentleman, another gentleman from Texas who serves with me on the Energy and Commerce Committee, great colleague, somebody who has championed energy development and certainly been a strong advocate for American energy security. Mr. Olson from Texas.
Well, I thank my good friend from Colorado and my brother-in-arms on the Energy and Commerce Committee fighting for U.S. domestic production of energy. I'm going to start my comments tonight by focusing on gas prices. We all know that gas prices have risen dramatically under the current administration. This chart here shows exactly what's happened in America. Our president took office right here about February of 2009. Gas prices were just over about $1.90 a gallon. You can see it spiked up to almost $2.70 a gallon, and then last summer, almost $4 a gallon. It's come back down. So it's over doubled in price since President Obama took office. These gas prices are a hardship on American families and American small businesses, families that have to take their kids to school, families that have to drive the kids to practice, families who have to go to the grocery store, families who have to go to church. No one is immune to these price increases. I'm privileged to represent part of the energy capital of the world, suburb of Houston, Texas. And we're not immune to these price increases. These are articles from a local online paper, Fort Bend Now, over the past month. I'll read them to you, just the selected portions of them. January 10th, 2012, Fort Bend gas prices jumped more than 11 cents. January 17th, 2012, 1 week later, gas prices in Fort Bend have risen another 2.2 cents in the past week. 1 week later, there's a theme here, Fort Bend County. Fort Bend gas prices have risen another 8.3 cents in the past week. That's 3 weeks, 25 cents per gallon increase in prices in my home county of Fort Bend County. Again, families and small businesses are struggling to survive with these incredibly high gas prices. And why is this happening? Well, uncertainty. Uncertainty in one particular region of the world. The uncertainty is coming from one country, Iran, and its threats to disrupt traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. And I've had a unique opportunity here in Congress. I served in the United States Navy for 10 years. I was a naval aviator, not necessarily a naval pilot, but I've actually flown missions right through the Straits of Hormuz. And Iran is threatening to shut down the straits because the United States and the European Union have put sanctions against Iran because of their threat to build a nuclear weapon, which is a direct threat to our security. Most importantly, it's a direct threat to the security of our best ally and friend of the world, the great country of Israel. Because of Iran's threats, which we have to take very seriously, let me give you a little bit about the Strait of Hormuz. As you can see, it's a very narrow body of water, about 30 miles wide. If you've been to Southeast Texas, you know where the Johnson Space Center is. Drive 30 miles south to be on Galveston Beach. Very, very narrow body of water. It's shallow, 200 feet, 2/3 the length of a football field. As you can see, the transit lanes for the ships are close to Iran. There's all sorts of little islands out here that they cannot maneuver through. They got to go close to Iran, again, posing a greater threat to them. Right here, Abu Musa, that is an Iranian base, a military base. So all the tanker traffic flowing through there, all our military ships have to pass right through Iran, right through Abu Musa. Let me tell you what Iran has there as a threat to the Strait of Hormuz. This is the Persian Gulf here. All along here in Abu Musa, there are missiles, surface-to-ship missiles aimed at our ships, aimed at tankers, going through every single day. And I know this because when I flew my plane through there, we were tracked by Iranian fire control radar. That's just the way the business works there in that part of the world. They've also got mines. Mines that can lay anywhere here throughout the straits, again, a very narrow body of water where ships have little room to maneuver. These mines, you don't have to run into them. They're modern mines. They can detect some sort of changes in pressure or some sort of sounds of engines of a ship coming through and blow up when the ship gets close. That's a big threat. There's another big threat, too. And this is the most lethal threat the Iranians have in the Strait of Hormuz, and the biggest reason for the uncertainty. This is an Iranian Kilo-class submarine. It was sold to the Iranians by the Russians in the early 1990s. I actually flew over the second one. We caught it up on the surface just like that when I was deployed to the region in 1994. The reason this submarine is so lethal is that it's a diesel-powered boat, meaning right now it's on the surface, it's running on diesel engines. But when it submerges, because it can't get atmosphere that's necessary to run internal combustion engines, it runs on batteries. Quiet batteries. It is the quietest submarine in the world, but it can't stay submerged forever. It has to recharge its batteries at specific intervals. Look at all this traffic in the Persian Gulf. And that's just an example. There's all sorts of fishing boats all over there that have diesel engines. This guy can come up. This little thing here is called a snorkel. He just can push that up just above the surface of the water and get the air he needs to run his diesel engines to recharge his battery. While he does that in the mix of all these boats with their diesel engines, he is very, very difficult to find him. In fact, the only way you can find him is with your eyeballs. Very much a challenge. And actually, he can go down and sit on the bottom if he wants to, waiting for the proper traffic, whoever he wants to target, to come through. This is a very real threat. This creates uncertainty in the market. This is why gasoline prices are spiking. What's the solution? And House Republicans have one. The Keystone XL pipeline. Very briefly, the orange line there is the Keystone pipeline, the singular Keystone pipeline. This pipeline is already up and running. As you can see, it's coming from Hardisty in Alberta, Canada, all the way down to the Midwest United States, Steel City, going to Cushing, Oklahoma, and going across Illinois to Patoka, St. Louis. Oil is already flowing through that pipeline. The Keystone XL pipeline starts at the same place, comes down a little bit west of the Keystone line, intersects at Steel City, goes down to Cushing, and as you can see, goes right down to the energy capital of the world, where my district is in Greater Houston area in Port Arthur, Texas. As we know, the administration, our president, has delayed or canceled approval of the Keystone XL pipeline because radical environmentalists and Hollywood elites disapprove of the pipeline. What's that done to our economy? Well, 20,000 shovel-ready jobs are in jeopardy. Over 800,000 barrels a day flowing from that pipeline to Southeast Texas, to the most up-to-date, technologically advanced refineries in the entire world. That's not happening. Energy security, national security. We don't have to worry about what's happening in the Persian Gulf. We don't have to worry about Hugo Chavez. Just this single pipeline with 800,000 barrels a day replaces what we're getting in from Venezuela right now. One other solution, the Alaskan Trans-Alaska Pipeline. And the American people may get confused. They hear about the Alaskan National Wildlife Refuge and the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. Here's just an example of what it is, just to show you. ANWR, the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge, is the light green area right here in the northeast corner of Alaska. As the listeners know, this is the great state of Alaska. And that's about half of the mainland of the United States. Basically all of Wyoming, almost to the Mississippi River. That's the size of Alaska. See this little tiny point up here? That is where the drilling to support the Trans-Alaska Pipeline is being done. One little spot. See the point? We have some problems. Just to let you know, let's talk a little bit about the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. It was designed to be built in 1973, right after the OPEC embargo on our country. OPEC shut the valves off for all their oil. Again, all that oil flowing through the Persian Gulf, Straits of Hormuz. Why? Because we sided with our good friend and ally Israel in the Yom Kippur War. So because of that, we realized that we need to develop American sources of energy. We should not be dependent upon the Middle East for our oil. And we built the Trans-Alaska Pipeline with all the hoopla and all the conflict with the environmental groups. It finally came online in the mid-70s. At the time before that, Alaska had the highest state income tax in the country, 14.5%. Because of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, Alaska now is the most tax-free state in America. One pipeline, taxes go away. Here are the numbers. 2.1 million barrels a day were flowing through the pipeline in 1988. Today, 671,000 barrels a day are flowing through the pipeline. 17% of our U.S. domestic crude production. As you can see, though, there has been almost a 75% decrease in the oil that's flowing through the pipeline. And that is a huge problem, because if the pipeline doesn't have a minimum amount of oil flowing through it in that extreme environment, the extreme cold, it's going to crack and break. It will not be able to be used again. But there's a solution for that too. And it's happening in the Energy and Commerce Committee with the leadership of my good friend from Colorado. I'll yield to him to talk about Shell Oil and the Chukchi Sea up there and all the reserves that we have available in that part of the country, offshore Alaska.
Well, I thank the gentleman for his comments on our resources in Alaska, and the little poster that you have there on drilling in Anwar, and you can see that little tiny dot. You know, it's almost difficult for me to see from here, just a little tiny pinpoint within the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. I've heard it described many times having a footprint similar to a postage stamp on a football field. And that's the area that you're talking about that would be used to help revitalize our energy resources with American-made, American-produced energy. Yeah, you're exactly right. Earlier last year, the House Energy and Commerce Committee passed H.R. 2021, the Jobs and Energy Permitting Act. It would help do a great deal to spur development of areas that have already been approved for resource development, areas like the Beaufort and Chukchi Sea area. This isn't opening up new areas. This is actually an area that's already been approved for leasing. Leases have been sold. They've already said, hey, this is an area where we can have the energy production take place. And so we're just trying to make sure that that energy doesn't get stopped and bogged down by bureaucratic and regulatory processes. So what we did in the Jobs and Energy Permitting Act is pass a bill, had great bipartisan support on the floor of the House, has now been introduced in the Senate by a bipartisan group of senators, to say that, look, you can't use an environmental appeals board that was bureaucratically created to hang up a permit for 5 years, as is the case with one particular project in the Beaufort Chukchi Sea area of Alaska. The end result of this project could be as many as 1 million barrels of oil a day and nearly 50,000 jobs being created across the country. Witnesses said before the committee that it would help reduce the price at the pump, and I think when you're talking about energy prices that have risen $1.66 since President Obama took office, we've got to do everything we can to lower the price of gasoline and help American families make ends meet. So I thank the gentleman from Texas for the opportunity. Would yield back for further comment.
Just so I'll follow up my friend's comments. So 1 million barrels a day is the estimate. 50,000 jobs. I mean, basically, if we do the Keystone XL pipeline, we get rid of Venezuela. This will get rid of Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, we're talking nearly a million barrels of oil a day. That's almost enough to replace our imports from Saudi Arabia. So between the two, Keystone Pipeline, the Beaufort Chukchi Sea development, I mean, we're talking significant, as much as 2 million barrels of oil a day, significant resources for this country, made in our own backyard.
Yes, sir. And I thank my colleague again for his leadership getting this bill through the House. Unfortunately, it's a jobs bill, so that means it's over there sitting in the majority leader's inbox over on the other side of the hill. But also tie this into the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. I mean, I understand that the development plan also includes the construction of 4 offshore production platforms, offshore pipelines that go across the National Petroleum Reserve to Alaska and link it to the Trans-Alaska system. So that oil that's in the Beaufort Sea, the Chukchi Sea, is actually going to go on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline build up the mass flowing through there, give that the heat the integrity it needs to use it for another 10 years. Is that true?
That's true, and one of the biggest challenges we face, as you mentioned, is the possibility that we could lose out on one of this nation's great works, the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, if we don't properly take care of it and make sure that we are actually utilizing it to its fullest extent. And so you're exactly correct.
And Shell has gone on, if my friend can confirm, but for almost 4 years now, they spent almost $3.5 billion trying to get that permit to drill offshore shallow water. And as my colleague knows, they have a very limited opportunity to drill. Very tough environment, very cold, and so they've put in almost $4 billion just to get these permits done because they want to give American source of energy to our country.
And not only were you talking about millions and billions of dollars that were spent on trying to go forward to produce energy in an area that was already approved to produce energy, but they were blocked by a bureaucratic process, they went around the world. And I think the number is staggering. It's around 400 wells that they drilled around the world in the amount of time that it's taken this administration to approve the one permit that they're trying to get. So 400 wells around the world, thousands of jobs created overseas, thousands of barrels of oil being produced around the world, but not a drop right here. And so that's the shame of it all when it comes to the bureaucratic mess that we're in.
Well, I thank my colleague for his leadership on this issue. The people of Colorado should be very proud. Leaders lead. My colleague from Colorado is a leader.
Thank the gentleman from Texas.
And one last chart to close. And this is a plea to our president. This is a picture of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. Unlike the Keystone XL pipeline, because of the difficulty building the pipeline in the ground, it's been built above the ground. And these are caribou, wild caribou, that are huddling around the pipeline. Mr. President, it's time to stop coddling to the Hollywood elites and the radical environmental groups. It's time to listen to the American people and the caribou enjoying the warmth of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. Because if these caribou could speak, they would say respectfully, Mr. President, drill, baby, drill. I yield back.
I think our call